Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is the last entry in the MCU from James Gunn for a while, as he is now in charge of the DC universe over at Warner Brothers. His absence will surely be felt, as Volume 3 is probably the best film in the MCU since Endgame. The returning cast with familiar characters like Star-Lord, Groot, Rocket, Drax, Nebula, Mantis, and Gamora work well together, especially in comedic scenes and even in the occasional heartfelt moments that might draw a tear or two to your eye. But like any other Marvel project, it is still cursed by mediocre writing moments that rely on cheap callbacks and exposition dumps to make this as broad an appeal as possible. I was actually quite surprised how gory and bloody the film gets at times, which isn't even only just for the sake of being a bit more edgy, but actually works quite well with the gruesome backstory that it tells for Rocket's character. The film both doesn't and does hold back with its visceral gut punches, but I'd say that even if a bit cheesy and over the top at times, it still worked quite well, even though a lot of the emotional part of the story was actually only told through flashbacks. I don't know what it is, but seemingly anything Vin Diesel touches turns into a somewhat chosen family, and here it's just a lot of fun to see a bunch of friends goofing around and being reluctantly vulnerable with each other. There are a couple of new characters that make their debut in the MCU, and they aren't given as much, but they're just a bit more naturally woven into the story compared to some other new characters that we had in recent Marvel films. There's Cosmo the telekinetic dog, Adam Warlock, and a fun villain that is so easy to hate, as is basically the impersonation of animal cruelty. Cameos are kept infrequent for Marvel standards and are part of enjoyable action sequences. The whole sequence around the Power Ranger looking suits is probably my favorite part of the movie overall. It took me a bit out of the story when I noticed that they were trying to bring this trilogy to a close, which was fine, but it just felt a bit too clean for me, and ultimately was more of a James Gunn send-off than a send-off for the Guardians entirely. The Guardians franchise has always been a favorite of mine, with the first one actually being my favorite out of the 30 movies that we have gotten now in the MCU so far. If you enjoy James Gunn's humor, Volume 3 will probably be a blast for you, as it pairs his comedic style with the characters in probably the best way so far. Everyone feels really comfortable in their roles, and especially Chris Pratt does a great job with what he's given. And Rocket and Groot are pushed a bit more to the sidelines, unfortunately, and ultimately don't really leave a notable impression. But there's a bunch of fun transformations that Groot goes through, and Rocket has the whole backstory that is basically just its own separate thing, and also, I guess, really emotional, even if it flashes back to it a few too many times for my liking, and brings the narrative a bit to a halt whenever it does. The needle drops are fun as always and will make you shuffle in your seat. The action is solid. There's a standout scene in a hallway that is done very well, but with a big cast like this, it is inevitable that some get the short end of the stick, which leaves Gamora and Adam Warlock a bit underdeveloped, but I'd like to see more of them in the future of the MCU. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is a much needed hit for a struggling MCU. With a movie that is not in any way tied to the larger story, it is a great conclusion for the trilogy, but not a savior for the mess that is the rest of the MCU. Who cares though? It's got a fun score, great jokes, and is very vibrant looking. What more could you want from a Guardians movie? I'm giving Volume 3 of Guardians of the Galaxy an 8 out of 10. Are you a good or a bad dog? Let me know in the comments below, and also let me know what you thought of the movie. Leave a like and subscribe for more reviews, and I'll see you soon.